You have been watching what happens when people go wrong. You have watched it carefully, and you have recognized yourself in it more than you expected. This video is not about other people. You know what you are against. You know it clearly, and you hold that position firmly. The thing you have been fighting has been shaping you. In its image, Nietzsche studied this transformation and found it was not a corruption. It was a confrontation with something that was always already there. He called it the shadow, and he said almost no one looks at it directly. This video will name the mechanism by which sustained opposition produces the thing it is opposing inside the person doing the opposing, not as a warning, as a description of a process that is already complete or in progress. By the end, the mirror will have cracked in a specific place you have been avoiding. Nietzsche's most misread concept is the will to power. It is not the desire to dominate others. It is the drive to overcome the resistance inside yourself. The resistance inside yourself is not weakness. It is the accumulated content of everything your values have required you to suppress. Every moral position you hold, every firm conviction about what is wrong, what should not be, what you are against, creates a corresponding suppression. Something that was part of you has been placed outside the boundary of what you will acknowledge. Nietzsche called the sum of the suppressed content the shadow. Not evil, not a different person, the self that your values cannot contain. His central observation about the shadow is this: it does not disappear because it is not acknowledged. It operates in the dark without the moderating force of conscious attention, and it finds its clearest expression in the thing the person is most forcefully opposing. This is the mechanism behind what Nietzsche called the enemy within. Not that the person becomes the enemy from the outside, adopts their tactics, mirrors their behavior, but that the opposition itself is sustained by something in the person that recognizes the enemy, that has something in common with the enemy, that is, in some configuration, the enemy. In the late 19th century, Nietzsche observed this pattern across the reform movements of his time. The temperance advocates whose ferocity suggested an intimate knowledge of what they were opposing, the moralists whose descriptions of vice were more detailed and more vivid than the vice itself, the anti-authoritarians who organized their movements with a precision that would have impressed the authorities they opposed. He was not accusing these people of hypocrisy. He was identifying a structural feature of sustained moral opposition. The fight shapes the fighter. Specifically, it shapes them in the direction of what they are fighting. Because fighting something requires you to know it, to think in its terms, to anticipate its moves. That knowledge does not stay outside you. And here is what Nietzsche found that remains true regardless of what you are opposing. The thing you have been most consistently against is not outside you. It is the shadow that your opposition has been feeding. Every act of opposition is also an act of attention, and sustained attention is a form of cultivation. The history of religious reformation in the 16th century provides Nietzsche's most precise case study. Martin Luther's opposition to the institutional Catholic Church was total and sustained over decades. He opposed its hierarchy, its use of authority, its deployment of fear, its control of interpretation. He opposed these things with complete moral seriousness. The Lutheran Church that emerged from his opposition reproduced, within 3 generations, the hierarchy, the use of authority, the deployment of fear, and the control of interpretation he had opposed. Not because Luther intended this, not because his followers were hypocrites, because the fight against a structure requires you to understand the structure. And the structure that is most deeply understood tends to be the structure that gets rebuilt. Nietzsche watched this pattern across the religious, political, and social movements of his century and drew the same conclusion each time. The reformer inherits the form they oppose, not by accident, not by corruption, by the logic of sustained opposition itself. Nietzsche, beyond good and evil. He who fights with monsters should look to it that he himself does not become a monster. And if you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you. This is not a warning. It is a description. The monster is already partially visible in the mirror. The question is only whether the gazer has noticed. Contemporary research on what psychologists call moral licensing has identified a pattern that Nietzsche would have recognized immediately. People who hold strong moral positions against a specific behavior show a statistically elevated rate of that behavior in domains they do not monitor as closely. The mechanism is not hypocrisy. It is that the moral position against the behavior creates a kind of cognitive pressure that finds release in contexts where the position does not apply. The shadow does not disappear because it is held at a distance morally. It accumulates pressure, and it finds release in the places the moral attention is not focused. Nietzsche's version of this is more precise than the psychological research. He is not talking about hypocrisy or failure of willpower. He is talking about the inevitable consequence of suppression, that what is suppressed does not become absent. It becomes unavailable to conscious management, and therefore more, not less, dangerous. The person who has never examined their shadow has not avoided it. They have simply given it more room to operate unsupervised. Think about the thing you are most consistently against, not a political position, something closer, a behavior in others that produces a specific response in you, a quality you have always found, difficult to be around, a type of person that you know immediately and with certainty you do not want to be. The certainty is part of the data. You're not uncertain about this one. You know exactly what you are against. Nietzsche's question is not, are you right to be against it? His question is, what do you know about it that makes the certainty so complete? Because the things we know most precisely, that we can identify at a distance, anticipate, describe in detail, recognize in its earliest manifestation, are the things we have studied. And we study most carefully what we are closest to. The person who cannot recognize a manipulator from across a room has not spent time studying manipulation. The person who can has. The question Nietzsche leaves open is, where did that study happen? Look at what you are against. Look at how fluently you describe it. That fluency is not evidence of distance from it. It is evidence of proximity. And now we are done with examples. There is something you are against, something specific, something you've held a position on for long enough that the position feels like character. It may be a behavior, a way of operating in relationships, a quality of attention or its absence, a way of using people, a way of being cruel under pressure, a way of lying, not in facts, but in framing. You know what yours is, and you have been fighting it in other people, in dynamics, in situations, for long enough that the fight has become a form of expertise. You know it, you can name it, you can see it early. Nietzsche does not ask whether you are right to oppose it. He asks you to look at the fight itself. Look at the energy you bring to opposing this thing. Look at the precision of your opposition. Look at the satisfaction, and it is a satisfaction, even when it is also rage, of recognizing it in someone else and being able to name it. That satisfaction is not the satisfaction of being different from the thing. That is the satisfaction of expertise, and expertise requires a source. You have told yourself the source is observation, that you learned it from watching others, that the expertise is external. Nietzsche's shadow does not accept this account. The things we know most fluently are the things we have practiced, or the things that have been practiced on us, which leaves the same residue. The residue is the knowledge is the shadow. There is a person, or there has been a person, who has accused you of the thing you are most against, not a stranger, someone who knew you, and you dismissed it. Perhaps correctly, perhaps the accusation was projection, perhaps it was unfair, but you dismissed it very quickly, faster than you would dismiss an accusation that had no purchase at all. The speed of the dismissal is Nietzsche's evidence, not the accusation itself, the response to it, because the thing that has no purchase does not need to be dismissed quickly. It simply does not land. The thing that needs dismissal has already, somewhere, landed, and the mirror, the cracked mirror, does not show you the enemy. It shows you the part of yourself that the fight has been producing, the part that knows the territory, the part that has been there. Nietzsche's answer to the shadow is not integration. He did not use the word in the way it is used in contemporary psychology. He was not prescribing a process by which the shadow is welcomed, understood, and absorbed into a more complete self. He was prescribing confrontation, not with the enemy, with the mirror, the act of looking at the cracked reflection directly without the immediate production of a counter-narrative, without the quick dismissal, staying with what the crack shows long enough to read it accurately. He did not promise that the confrontation would be comfortable. He thought comfort was the wrong measure entirely. The The will to power, the drive to self-overcoming, is not the drive toward comfort or even toward resolution. It is the drive to see accurately, regardless of what the accurate seeing costs. The people Nietzsche most admired were not the people who had resolved their shadows. He was not certain resolution was possible. They were the people who had looked at the mirror long enough to stop being surprised by what was in it. That is a different kind of person from the one who has never looked, not better in the moral sense, more honest, more dangerous in some ways, more capable of causing harm with full knowledge of what they are doing, but also more capable of choosing not to. The unconscious shadow does not choose. It acts. The shadow that has been seen, at least, can be watched, and the watched thing is not the same as the unwatched thing. The mirror is cracked. The reflection is divided. The question is not whether you can put it back together. It is whether you are willing to look at what the crack is showing, without looking away, without the counter-narrative, just looking. Nietzsche had one more observation about the people who made it to the other side of this confrontation. They did not stop having a shadow. The shadow does not resolve. What changed was the relationship to the fight. They stopped needing the enemy outside themselves to give the shadow a location. The next question in this cluster is about what happens when you stop fighting the enemy out there. When the opposition ends, what is left? And whether that is what you thought you were.